Thank you. Good morning. India-Spain relations are strong in every respect except the fact that the ambassador can't speak Spanish. So you will have to bear with me while I speak in English. And I think that one aspect of further improvement of our relations is when everybody in the Indian Embassy can speak and understand Spanish, but my colleague makes up amply for my deficiency in this very beautiful and very important language. To our hosts this morning, a word of profound gratitude to Vox Populi, the media of the future. Thank you for co-hosting us today. To Abertis, which is an old Spanish company, but a brand new Spanish-Indian company, as it sets out its long journey in India. We thank you for hosting us this morning. And to all of you who have made your time available to attend this meeting. From the guest list, I see that more than half are already familiar with India or have businesses in India. And the other half, I hope, will be convinced, persuaded by this breakfast meeting to look at India more seriously. Thank you all for coming. We also see the presence of diplomats of some friendly countries. Welcome. We thank you for your interest in India. 4 days ago, the International Monetary Fund presented its periodic quarterly report on the prospects for the world economy in the next couple of years. I have taken a printout of the main summary and I have laid out a few facts and figures to set the morning discussion going. And it's here, it's called The World Economy Gathering Speed, ? And a lot of countries are contributing to this question mark. And we can discuss what those question marks are in the question answer session. But clearly, India is not part of that question mark. India belongs to the gathering steam, gathering speed portion of that headline. Why is that so? India, along with a large part of the Asia Pacific, is now truly the driving force of the world economy. It has been a process in the making, but now the trends are very, very clear. We are happy to be part of the growth story in the Asia Pacific. We're happy to be part of the growth story globally. And we would like our friends in Spain to pay particular attention to what is happening in the Asia Pacific. It may constitute 14% of your trade, but surely by design and by circumstance and by necessity, that figure will increase, both for Spain and the EU. So the International Monetary Fund has growth projections for 2017 and 2018. It looks at the euro area and it says that 2016 was 1.7%, 2017 will be 1.7%, and 2018 is 1.6%. In the United States, 1.6, 2.3, 2.5 in 2018. China, 6.7 last year, 6.6 expected this year, and 6.2 in 2018. Let me come to the figures that the IMF projects for India. The IMF estimates that our growth was 6.8% last year, which is a little less than what we ourselves count, but we will go by the IMF figures for the time being. It says India will grow at 7.2% this year and at 7.7% in 2018. Of course, citing the EU figures is always a point of slight contention with our Spanish friends, and very rightly so. You do better than the EU figures. You've done 3.2% last year. The estimates are anywhere between 3 plus this year and going forward. And a large part of your growth story is related to exports. That is one of the fundamental transformations that is taking place in the Spanish economy after you have pulled yourselves out, very admirably so, as you increase the competitiveness of your companies. Foreign exports are an increasingly important part of your ability to sustain growth. So you will need to export more to the EU, to your traditional friends in Latin America, to the United States. But to sustain that element, you will increasingly have to look at Asia. And within Asia, of course, as the figures point, you do really have an opportunity in the growth story in India. Why India? It is not just because of the fact of our projected economic growth, but also for the fact that India is now one of the youngest countries in the world. We have a population of 1.2 billion people, growing. But India will be the world's youngest country by 2020, with an average age of 29 years. In 2030, our average age will be 32 years. As we speak today, the United States has a workforce deficit of 17 million workers. China has a deficit of 47 million workers today. And given the growth profiles, age profiles, the demographic trends in China, this deficit will increase. Now, I'm giving the example of China only to exemplify that even in Asia Pacific, there are certain advantages that would accrue with respect to India. India is also attractive, I would suggest, because of its policy direction and policy predictability. Over 92% of the Indian economy today is open for foreign business. In the other sectors, the other 8%, you have some levels of government approvals, but 92% is almost on the automatic route. Our economic reform process, begun in the early 90s, is still a work in progress. And recently, we have moved forward with a new bankruptcy law, a new IPR policy, building on the IPR protections that we built in the 1990s and the last decade, ongoing labor reform, and a nationwide GST legislation which will come into effect, we expect, in July this year, where archaic, multiple, trade inhibiting taxation procedures are being combined into one, thereby reducing the level of taxation, facilitating business and movement across the country, We also have in Delhi, in India, what can be called competitive federalism. There is the reality of India as reflected in Delhi, but there is a further reality and an increasing opportunity in the almost 30 states that we have in India. And each of these states are now playing an increasingly important role in foreign trade and investment. You may have certain policies, frameworks which are pan-Indian, but you also have regional specificities which we would encourage you to explore. And you will be surprised by the level of openness to foreign trade and investment that you would see at the state level itself. I mention this because for Spanish companies, this would not be a new element. You yourself have experience of this in your own country, where you have a particular policy that comes out from Madrid, but there is an additional opportunity that comes out by engaging with the various provinces in Spain. Having put forward this overall perspective, let me turn to certain sectors and spell out the opportunities which may be of interest to specific companies. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but I hope it's a list that would be of interest to those present here. Railways. The Indian railways carry almost half the population of Spain every day in their trains. That is 21 million people. We carry 1 billion tons of freight annually. But for a country of India's size and growth opportunity, both of these will expand. And there is opportunity across the board. The average speed of Indian trains is about 50 to 60 kilometers. We have plans to increase the speed of these trains on existing infrastructure or marginal improvement of existing infrastructure to building absolutely first-rate, fast speed trains in the future. We are very happy that a company such as Talgo is deeply involved in India, and we hope that Talgo and others will have a further opportunity to carry forward cooperation and the opportunities in India. We estimate that in the next 5 years, the planned investment in the railway sector alone is about $130 billion. Roads. Last year, India built over 8,000 odd kilometers of roads, of new roads. This year, the government's plan is to build 30 kilometers of roads per day. And under a very dynamic Minister for Roads, he intends to double this next year. The road sector, of course, is of particular interest to a company like Abertis. We feel that world-class companies that are there in the road infrastructure business from Spain, like Abertis and others, should look at India more seriously. India today is what in the road infrastructure business is what Spain was in the late 70s, early 80s. You had your main cities connected, but you had little else. But look at Spain today. Fantastic infrastructure. Look at Spanish companies in Europe, look at Spanish companies, what they can do in Latin America. So in this sector, I think there is absolutely no doubt that Spanish companies have world-class capabilities. Now these capabilities need to be matched with an expanding opportunity and a scalability where the numbers are several times more than what has been done until now. Ports. India, like Spain, was once a very major maritime country. In the 250 years ago, India contributed 25% of the world's GDP. And much of that was related to the fact that we traded through the maritime sector. And for Spanish businesses and Spaniards generally, this would not be an unfamiliar thought. That your growth as a country, as an economy, and as a power is intrinsically related to how much you can do in the maritime sector. There's a huge opportunity there as well. We have 12 major ports and around 200 notified non-major ports. And you have all sorts of ports in India. In terms of speed, we have ports that can compare to your slowest ports, and we can beat them by several measures. We also have ports which are faster than your fastest ports. We have everything. We want you to come to decrease the number of slow ports and increase the number of faster clearance ports. There is not just the port infrastructure that is coming about, it is the connectivity. I mean, you might have a port, but the nearest railway line is 100 kilometers away, therefore the port is not of much use unless you have internal connectivity. It is what is called the Sagar Mala program. Right? It's it's a Garland program, and that is worth itself. This interconnectivity business itself is worth $16 billion. Urban development and smart cities. Here too, you would very much relate to the fact that 30 years ago, Spanish cities and towns were not what they are today. Here too, Spanish companies have huge expertise, experience, and success stories that can relate to what you can do with respect to the Smart Cities program in India. The government has selected 100 smart cities to begin with. We have several thousands more in the pipeline. And the investment here just for the next 5 years is expected to be about $15 billion. Renewable energy. A country of India's size and population and economic growth and present levels of power consumption per capita, which is one of the lowest in the world, India has need for every form of energy. But it is in our interest and in the interest of the world that as India moves forward, more and more of this energy comes from renewable, clean sources. Therefore, India has put for itself the objective of establishing 100 gigawatts of solar and 60 gigawatts of wind by 2022. We are already the fourth in wind installed capacity after China, US and Germany. We intend to do more. And in this field, we're very happy that major Spanish companies such as Gamesa and Acciona are already present in India, and we would very much want them and other companies to do more. It's an expanding field, not just for the Indian market, but also for the market that can be sourced out of India into other parts of the Asia Pacific or into Africa. And we are very happy that some of the Spanish companies are already including production in India for third country exports. Defense. India is in the process of a long-term modernization and development program. The total value over the next decade of the Indian defense market is expected to be $130 billion in terms of defense equipment, but also $110 billion in terms of what is called homeland security infrastructure, right from airport metal detectors to sniffer things, to drones, to whatever. There is a defense procurement policy of 2016 which makes it easier for foreign companies to invest in India. 49% investment is on the automatic route. You can invest up to 49% in an Indian defense industry without any government approvals. You can go up to 100% with selective government approvals. So India is one of those countries where it is possible to have a 100% foreign-owned defense production unit in India. Very few countries allow that. We're very happy that there are already major Spanish defense companies active in India. We would like them to be more active. We would also like the small and medium industries to follow in the example of the defense majors to look at opportunities in India. I would say that here too there is considerable similarity. In Spain, the defense industry, of course, is split between, say, 15%, which is, the big players. But over 80% of the production line in Spain in the defense side is with small and medium enterprises. That, I think, is an identical reflection of how things are in India as well. Now, while it is easy for the big companies to enter into a market as distant and as new, as probably as complex as India, we definitely understand the difficulties that smaller players play. And that is something that both the Spanish Defense Ministry and our government are determined to address, including through creating cooperative platforms, networking platforms that make it easier for smaller companies, small and medium enterprises to look at India not just as a market given the size of the Indian market, but also for third country exports. Civil aviation. The domestic civil aviation market had 81 million flights last year. That was a growth of over 20%. In terms of the expansion of the domestic civil aviation market, the fastest growth was in India. which is another way of saying that the growth in the market in China and in Southeast Asia has almost plateaued. India, we are a little away from the plateau. We have a long way to go before we reach a plateau ourselves. Between Airbus and Boeing, India will need more than 3,500 jets in the next 20 years. There are a huge number of greenfield airports, old airports which need to be built up, new airports that need to cater to new demand, and the total business opportunity in this aviation sector is of course $120 billion. Here too we are happy that a company like Indra, which is a world leader, has been very deeply involved with the Indian market. 80% of our air traffic control is controlled by systems that are provided by this fantastic company. And of course, that is only the beginning. There is a lot more that can be done. Automobiles and automotives. Like Spain, India too is now undergoing the same process of expansion of the automobile sector, like you did when you got into the EU and established this fantastic plants in Valencia and Valladolid and Navarra. Production for Spain, production is part of a supply chain that goes into Europe and globally. We are doing that ourselves, and actually it's a fairly good reflection of what we are doing in Asia now is what Spain did a couple of years ago. We expect the auto industry will grow to $260 to $300 billion in the next decade. The auto industry has been one of the most attractive sectors for attracting foreign direct investment. Here too, you can produce, you can have 100% owned foreign investment firms. There are already good examples of cooperation between India and Spain, and I would suspect that this would only increase as Spain adjusts to the reality that would come out of whatever happens after Brexit. Food processing. The market in India for food processing is about $120 billion annually. Only 10% of our food is processed. Here there is a huge opportunity for Spanish companies to come in, not just in the food processing part, but also in the cold storage chain part, and the food manufacture part, and food exports part. I mean the entire chain. The government intends to create 42 mega food parks and 138 cold chain projects. This has been one of the weak areas where India has a long way to go. So there are very attractive tax benefits that are being promised to this industry. India plans to host in November this year, 3rd to 5th November, a World Food India Summit, basically for the industry that is involved with the food processing part. We have, of course, extended a formal invitation to the Spanish government to inform the Spanish industry. We would be very happy as the embassy to work with your associations and Spanish industry to look at Spanish participation in this event, and of course through our friends in the media to give more publicity to this event. Coincidentally, and a very happy coincidence, India will be this year the partner country for San Sebastian Gastronomica in October 2017. We intend to use that also as a platform to to make available the opportunities that are there in India, and we would very much like Spanish company to participate. This is a field that really is wide open. Let me end with tourism, because here too India and Spain are pretty similar in certain respects, but so different in other respects. Spain, of course, is a tourism superpower. I mean, you have the numbers, you have the history, you have the cuisine, you have the reports. The World Economic Forum Tourism Competitive Index ranked Spain as #1 this year. Rightly so. I mean, you just have to look around and see the reasons for that. India was ranked number 40. Of course, the index has several components. In terms of historic and cultural facilities, India and Spain are very similar. We rank very, very high. We have a lot of history to show. Infrastructure, of course, Spain is far ahead, and we have a long way to go. But it has certain very interesting differences. You get 75 million tourists, excellent, I mean, which is very good. But your tourists spend approximately 850 to 900 US dollars while they're here. One tourist spends 850. A tourist who comes to India, we don't get your numbers. A tourist who comes to India spends more than $2,000. So obviously we have something in us that attracts more out of tourists than you do. And there are other areas where India can learn a lot from Spain. There is a direct flight that connects between Madrid and Delhi. We would encourage your companies to make use of that. We would encourage your companies to make use of that. And that is really another area where I think there's a huge potential that lies ahead of us. Let me end by saying a couple of things on our relations with Spain. In political and strategic terms, they are almost problem-free. We have very similar views on a lot of international issues. In the economic side, and I've spent the entire morning explaining to you that this is a story of untapped potential. There is so much that can be done together, and increasingly there is so much that would need to be done together because of the changing requirements of both Spain and India, and the changing complexity of the world. We would be partners in several areas. There is, I think, a slight mental distance that still remains, which is understandable in a historic sense. I mean, Spain looked towards Europe and to Latin America. Nothing wrong with that. And India too, because of its historic relations with certain countries in Europe, defined Europe in the context of either through Brussels or through London or through Berlin. Well, all that is changing as we speak. It is changing for you, that reality. It's changing for us, and it is for both countries to grasp that opportunity. And indeed, that opportunity will be presenting itself when we expect a Prime Minister's visit to Spain in the next couple of months. So, on that happy note, I would like to thank our two co-hosts for hosting us. We hope it's been well worth your time to invite India. We have a happy story to tell, and we're very happy to tell them. Thank you.